Drink beer, it's good for you.
Hello and welcome to the video. In this video we'll be talking about wheat and its many forms that are relevant to the brewer. This video has been made due to a large amount of people requesting clarification. So here goes. It is fair to say that wheat comes in many forms that can be useful to the brewer. Do understand though that compared to malting barley, wheat is much less reliable in terms of yield prediction in malted form. This is simply because there are no brewing specific breeding programs for wheat, as it is mostly sold for foodstuffs and is geared towards that market rather than the brewing market. Keep this in mind when your numbers are off the next time when using wheat malt. Some people have many problems with it, some never have any, but it is something to consider if you do. Maltsters do what they can of course, but this does provide limitation. Malting wheat is also a much harder process compared to malting barley. For brewing standard wheat beers, regular wheat malt is its common form, and this is quite simply wheat that has been through a malting process so that it possesses the enzymes required for starch conversion into sugars during the mash. Malted wheat is usually used in grain bill ratios of up to 70%. The Germans actually have a great law that says a wheat beer has to be at least 50% wheat. Regular malted wheat comes in two forms essentially, what many call regular wheat malt or red wheat malt, and also we have white wheat malt. White wheat malt, as you can see here, is obviously a different colour, but it also generally has more protein than a red wheat malt, along with a slightly higher average yield. In addition to this, white wheat malt usually has a duller flavour compared to red wheat malt. It is not as commonly used and usually has a higher price tag compared to red wheat malt. Malted wheat is also used in smaller amounts for certain beer styles to aid in body, head retention, in some cases for its haze. Due to its high protein content, it will produce a haze in an end beer if clarity methods or finings are not used. Malted wheat selection does not end here though, thankfully. I am particularly fond of the specialty wheat malts found at Castle Malting in Belgium, who are one of the oldest malt producers in the world. They produce a wheat chocolate malt called Chateau Wheat Chocolate, as well as crystal wheat malt and a black wheat malt. These specialty wheat malts bring an awful lot to the brews they feature in, acting to smooth out styles despite the colour they bring, as well as lacking any astringency at all. You will note that I feature some of these in my recipes that I've shared in the past. Not everyone can obtain these sadly, but I have recommended them and still do today. Okay, let's now return to standard wheat malt for a moment. The funny thing about wheat malt is that due to the malting process, its end flavour is less pronounced compared to unmalted variants like those on screen now. So if you desire a truer malt flavour, then look no further than these varieties. These varieties are to be used alongside a base malt, as of course they have not been malted, so as such their starches cannot be converted in your mash to fermentable sugars on their own. They will produce fermentable sugars when used alongside an actual malt because the malt will provide the enzymes in the mash required for conversion of the starches into sugars. The other thing to keep in mind is that if these are also used solo, they will end up a real mess of stickiness that will give you the sparge from hell no matter what you do. When used in small amounts, they will all contribute to the beer in quite similar ways, as they are all very much the same thing but in a different form. Let's look at these a little bit more in more detail. I will start with raw wheat. This stuff can be a real pain to mill because it is very tough and hard. Be careful to not overdo the milling of raw wheat either, as this will take away from its flavour value. Raw wheat is used usually at up to 50% in certain beer styles. It is often featured in Belgian beer styles like Lambics and the Wit. Mashing with this stuff in this sort of high ratio will for sure require long protein rests. Otherwise you can simply forget doing a sparge. If you think malted wheat can be a problem, then the raw form will make this seem like a cakewalk. Personally, I usually avoid it in favour of softer wheat versions that have been processed to make them easier to use and to give more yield. I am not a lambic brewer though, to be fair. And then we have torrefied wheat. Sounds quite catching, but in actual fact this version has simply been through a heating process to open the kernels, which aids in conversion time and gives it a higher yield compared to raw wheat. It is supplied as whole kernels and needs to be milled, but it is nice and soft, so milling is no problem, especially compared to raw wheat. This stuff will vary from supplier to supplier in how it should be used, so check the data sheet for the max in-batch data, but anywhere from 5 to 40% can be seen. However, 5 to 10% is its common usage amount. I find that this stuff adds a true wheat flavour and a little toasty and cereal flavouring. It has an advantage over flaked wheat in that it is easier to mash. And finally we have flaked wheat. This version has been steamed and rolled, which greatly improves its ability to be converted into sugars compared to raw wheat. It does not require milling, but it can give problems in a mash. Naturally, this can be improved by using either rice or oat hulls, which is great advice for using wheat in general anyway. Just like you find with Torrefied wheat, it does have usage variations, so do check data sheets, but again 5 to 10% is its common usage amount. Some brewers prefer flaked wheat over torrefied wheat because they feel that it leads to a slightly better flavour that is softer with a seemingly fresher wheat flavour. You will note in my recipes that I seldom use torrefied wheat, and I really never bother with raw wheat because of all the problems it is with milling and so on. However, I would recommend that you try it all out yourself and find out for yourself what is right for you. Our taste buds are all different, so it really is a case of trying everything, including raw wheat, and making your own mind up. Nobody can tell you either one is better for you, and as such general consensus is irrelevant. This now brings this video to a close. If you have any questions, then please let me know via YouTube or Facebook. I do hope that you found this video to be useful, interesting and enjoyable. If appropriate, then please like this video on YouTube, and if you have not done so already, please consider subscribing. I regularly post new content. Happy brewing!